And before I introduce our next speaker, I just want to take a few minutes to thank some folks. Thanks especially to a really great tech team. It's wonderful when we can increase the demands and the requests for audio. As you can see, even from this morning to this afternoon, the stage plotting has changed dramatically, and they're rolling with it no problem. So thank you for a great tech team. Thanks also to the entire team here at the National Constitution Center. Bridget Robbins is sort of leading that for our efforts here today, and really appreciate the welcome hospitality that we've received here. And thanks to my MIF team as well. Not the entire board is with us, but several board members are with us, and maybe if I could just ask them to stand and say hello, not say hello, but actually just wave, and if any board members are here, scattered through the audience, and some are probably taking important Zoom calls, etc. It's really wonderful to have our board members with us. And thanks to individual staff members as well. Marie Porter, who many of you have encountered at the front desk as well, and Nina Sachdev is back in the back there, our communications director. Courtney Eshelman, and our newest employee, Katie Resch, is with us on her second day of employment. So a warm welcome to Katie as well. And extra special thanks, even though she said, don't mention everyone by name, Roshni Melia, who's really running this show with great verve and meticulousness, and she has it down to the second hand, and I'm blowing that all up right now, but I had to say so. Anyway, so thanks to all of you, and thanks to all of our members as well. This is a membership organization, and thank you all for being with us as members. And I think this is a good time just to remind ourselves, since we are in the National Constitution Center, we have a visual reminder that it's really important to be a member. And it was true in colonial times, it's true now. We really do depend on each other to make this a lively and vibrant community, and so we appreciate your membership as well. So all the thank yous and membership appeals aside, it's really my pleasure to introduce to you Andrew Ramsammy, who is the Chief Content and Collaboration Officer at the Local Media Association, where he leads Word in Black. And that is, I think, an extremely important organization to hear about today, both for a little bit what we heard this morning, but also some of us heard about the Black press last night, and the incredibly important role it has played for decades and beyond. And it has informed us even when we didn't know it. It may be that things that we learned about through the mainstream press had been bubbling up for years and years in the Black press, but we didn't experience it through that channel. And so Andrew is doing the really important work of taking all of those stories that are happening in communities and bringing it to a national audience as well. So welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Vince. This is my first Media Impact Funders Conference, so I'm very excited to be here and to be representing the Local Media Association. For those of you that don't know the Local Media Association and the Foundation, it's actually two organizations that sit inside of one another. One is a typical 501c6 trade association, and then LMF is our 501c3 organization. It's non-endowed, so it's not like we're in the business of giving out money, but we do work with funders to try to come up with different solutions to some of our industry's most pressing issues. At the heart of that and at the beginning of that is business transformation, and below you'll see some of the programs that we run. We have reader revenue programs, accelerators, the Meta Branded Content Project, Digital Club. Next to that is our industry collaboration, which we believe really strongly about, which includes Word in Black, our latest collaboration called News is Out, which is an LGBTQ plus collaboration, the Oklahoma Media Center, which is actually funded by the Democracy Fund here, and then the Climate Collaborative. We also believe that journalism should be supported by philanthropy, so we actually have a lab which is run by Frank Mungiam. Frank is actually here. He's also known as the man with the hat, so if you ever hear that term, it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. But he runs the journalism lab there, and we have a fund for local journalism. We have our journalism lab that Frank runs, and then we also have a local news fund. And then lastly, prior to George Floyd, LMA has been committed to sustainability for publishers of color by launching the Fund for Black Journalism, our now Knight LMA Bloom Lab, which is a lab focused on sustainability for Black, locally owned and operated media, and then a project that we did with 5 Black publishers rebuilding their CMSs from the ground up. So while we all thought that 2020 was the defining year in which an image would reawaken race in America, we have to go back to actually September in 1955. If you all recall, there was an image that was widely shared of a mutilated body of a 14-year-old boy who was lynched by 2 white men. That photo was shared to the mainstream media, and not one mainstream news outlet covered it. The photo, which was shot by a photographer from Jet magazine, was then shared to the Black press. The Black press then covered that photo, shared it amongst their community, and that ultimately led to the indictments of those 2 men. Now, we all know that those 2 men were not convicted, and actually just recently, some news broke that the case was going to be reopened, in which the woman who was involved in this as well too was not indicted. But it goes to show today and to tell you that since the beginning of the Black press, they have been covering stories about Black communities from the beginning of time. So fast forward to 2020, when George Floyd happens, and yet again, local Black communities across the US have been reporting on modern day lynchings, where police officers have been killing people unarmed, Black men unarmed. But yet every time a Black publisher produces one of those stories, they often lose equity in that conversation because the story goes national. And there's no way for those publishers collectively to be able to capitalize on that opportunity. And I say capitalize on that by meaning that audiences are coming in, receiving that content, consuming that content, but the publishers themselves lose equity. And why did they lose equity? Well, the truth is that the very same institutional structural racism that exists in our society also exists within the publishing community. Black publishers have not been afforded the opportunity that most mainstream outlets take for granted, like digital transformation, like funding from philanthropy, or simply getting a blue check mark next to their name on digital platforms. And the majority of Black publishers are for-profit entities, family-owned businesses, which have been excluded from conversations specifically within the world of philanthropy because they are for-profit. So the 5 publishers on the top, starting with Eleanor Tatum, were a part of a digital transformation lab that LMA had invested in. And after George Floyd, Eleanor Tatum called our CEO, Nancy Lane, and asked her, would you be able to stand up a donation page for us? Eleanor had come to find out that through a contact that come Monday morning, a list was going to be sent out to several high net worth individuals with donor advised funds. And nowhere on that list was journalism. Nowhere on that list was Black journalism. So very quickly, Nancy and Jay Small, our chief operating officer, put together a Give Butter page, and by Monday, the page was up. And several weeks later, hundreds of thousands of dollars had been donated and raised, which became the Fund for Black Journalism. So then the question became, well, now what do we do? And Eleanor and the rest of the publishers decided to add 5 additional publishers to stand up Word in Black to become the world's first digital news startup leveraging legacy Black publishers who collectively have over 800 years of publishing experience to the Black community. I like to consider it the world's oldest Black media startup. Some of the publishers don't take kindly to the word old. The mission of Word in Black is very simple. It's to find solutions to racial inequities in America. And it promises to confront those inequities by elevating solutions and amplifying the Black experience, by collecting, reporting, and sharing stories about real people in real communities across our country. Those 10 publishers that you saw go from as far east as New York, all the way to Sacramento, as far south as Houston, and all the way up to Michigan. So it covers a wide swath of the United States. And on top of that sits a team, which is funded by philanthropy. And this is the all-star team. I just want you to note all women who are leading the charge. A couple of months ago, we had a meeting with all the publishers and the editorial staff, the central content team. And Sunny Messiah Giles, her jaw dropped. I said, Sunny, what's going on? And she said, I see the future. This is the next generation of what the Black press looks like. And I'm very proud that we get to continue to stand on the legacy of these Black publishers. And last night we had a great conversation with Bob Vogel about the Philadelphia Inquirer, continuing to do its work. The Tribune, pardon me. It's such an important role in making sure that content is made by Black people, for Black people, but not exclusively. You'll see one of our team members, Maya Pottinger, is a data journalist. This is part of our strategy to have data plus an actual reporter. We do that also with health as well. But this team has actually grown our newsletter from 0 to 40,000 subscribers in less than 6 months from launching from last year. This is just an example of some of the headlines that we've covered on Word in Black. We've done stories on maternal mortality. We've done stories on education. We've focused on beats. So the first beat that was funded by Chan Zuckerberg focused on education, specifically looking at COVID-19. We did a series of virtual events online where families and community members from across the US were able to call in and talk and have a discussion. And also as well too, part of our strategy has been to focus on diversifying revenue. And on the bottom, you'll see 2 partnerships that we've done with AARP, focusing on caregivers within the Black community, as well as a partnership that we did with Biogen. Biogen reached out to us and said, did you know that Alzheimer's within the Black community is completely underdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all? What can we do to connect with Word in Black? And what they saw was an opportunity to connect with Black audiences. And it reminded me of a story when I was working at a public radio organization, and a woman said, we need to talk to millennials. And I looked out across the office and almost a third of the staff were millennials, but yet she never saw millennials. So to me, it's interesting when people want to connect to Black audiences and Black communities, they never think about connecting with the Black press. So as I mentioned before, we have become very diversified and sustainable, specifically around journalism funded by philanthropy. I think what's been interesting about this is that funders have begun to look at themselves, and as I'm sure you all are, and are beginning to question whether or not your investments are actually reaching the audiences that you would hope. I've worked in public media, and public media has tried to do a lot of work to try to reach diverse audiences, but yet it never did. And I would always say, well, why don't we partner with ethnic-owned media in our communities? And one general manager told me once, why would we do that? Why would we give that away? So in the spirit of collaboration, I think there's an opportunity to partner with the Black press and Black media, as our philanthropic sponsors have, as well as what we've done with branded content and sponsorship. But again, as you can see from the pie chart, we are already on track to being diverse in terms of our business model and our revenue, building towards sustainability. So how does one actually meet this moment? Well, Louis Pasteur has that famous tag, that famous line of chance favors the prepared. And after George Floyd, it wasn't like all of a sudden we just turned on the lights and we put up a website. There was a lot of work that was being done behind the scenes at LMA to ensure that we were prepared for the moment. And what that meant was that we needed to invest in technology and infrastructure, and these are some of the programs that we do at LMA, to invest in reader revenue and audience through partnerships that we've done with the Meta Journalism Project and an investment that actually LMA did earlier this year with Blue Lena. I mentioned before our philanthropy lab, which to date, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, has raised over $11 million for over 50 news organizations that are part of our lab. Our branded content project, which has had phenomenal success, over $50 million of revenue that's been generated there. And one story that I want to share with one of the publishers that is in Word in Black and was a part of the branded content project. In just 1 year alone, he went from 0 to $400,000 and now $450,000 of branded content revenue. That is game-changing money. And then we've also worked on succession planning. As you saw from the photo, a good bulk of our publishers are over the age of 60 and are approaching that age where they want to retire. So we partnered with the National Trust for Local News on delivering a succession planning workshop. And let me tell you, there were some very interesting conversations that happened between both the publishers and their kids. which all of this is, just so you know, the goal of this is to keep the Black press free and independent, and part of that plan is ensuring that it remains within their families. So where do we go from here? I believe that we have to stop talking about journalism solely as a collaboration for the sake of journalism. I actually believe that there's a business model around collaboration. And as you can see, right, over $3.2 million of funding has been created, both from philanthropy and branded content and reader revenue. But I think there's even more work that can be done to strengthen that. I also believe sustainability, that we have to define what a new norm for sustainability looks like. And it takes everyone in this room to have that discussion. A lot of our investments go out and they never come back home to roost. And I think we have to have some very serious business conversations about what does it mean to be sustainable? What does that path look like? How long does it take? How will you get there? What's the plan? Equity also must become a tangible asset. And what I mean by that is, what is the next generation going to inherit? Many of you in this room are silver-haired and graying and about to exit our industry in a short period of time. And I'm not saying what period of time, but a short period of time nonetheless. What are you leaving behind? Our black publishers are constantly thinking about what is going to be left behind for the next generation. What will philanthropy leave behind for the next generation? Leaving this conference, what will you leave behind? We have to leave behind equity. Also, investing in a shared infrastructure. Lots of discussion this past morning and this afternoon. A lot of the investments that we're doing at scale can hit probably 90 to 95% of publishers all at once. So there's no need to invest in digital technology and infrastructure by going one at a time. The other part of this also too is looking at shared managed services, which I know doesn't sound sexy, but it is certainly very needed. Most of our publishers are in one business and one business only. That is journalism. It is not technology. So I believe that we have to look at how do we create a shared managed services approach to infrastructure. And finally, ethnic media is the trust balm for our democracy woes. If you look at what the Black press has been doing, Hispanic press, gay press, any affinity group, they are the vein to their communities. They are the most trusted sources in their communities. But yet when we hear about mainstream media or anyone talking about trust, they completely look over what ethnic media has done. And finally, we have to scale this model of Word in Black beyond Word in Black. So I'm happy to say that we have begun that work already. Our latest collaboration with News Is Out, which is an LGBTQ+ collaboration, and Tracy Bain is here somewhere. Tracy, she's back there. She's one of the members in that collaborative. We've already begun to do work with her. And I'll just say that AARP has now come on board as one of our branded content sponsors for AARP, and we're building out that model for them as well too. We've also had interest from Hispanic publishers, Asian publishers, as well, to take the Word in Black model and to scale it. So I'll leave you with this. This is the photo this past August. We all met in Chicago for the very first time since the pandemic. This was all born out in the pandemic, and we did everything all on Zoom. And these are the publishers all sitting around the table to discuss the next steps of what Word in Black will become, which I'm happy to say will become its own entity. We're still talking about what the structure might look like, but LMA will be heavily involved in those next steps. So I said a lot. If you want to find out more about LMA and what we're working on, if you want to download our impact report, the QR code is up on the screen. Also, Frank has a couple of hard copies in his backpack if you want to grab some. Thank you so much.